All right, first of all, I just want to thank you all for taking time to come and talk about this thing we're going to call the Technology Enhanced Learning Report Card. So the plan is with the track that we're on here to look at tools for the future and what we can do to be able to better all of our goal to make a better place for education. That is something that I'm hoping to be able to provide that tool for here today. And like any modern presentation, what I'd ask is if you got your, I see a couple phones there, Lisa, thank you. If you've got your scanner ready, there's going to be several QR codes as we go through this to be able to provide the tool to you all that we're going to be discussing for this. Now, I have not met many people with this organization. I've been a participant with Shaping EDU for a couple of years now, and just so you guys know who I am from Instructure, my name is Jason Thompson Richter. I work at Instructure as what we call a senior solutions engineer. My background is all in education, years as an educator, years as an instructor, technologist, LMS administrator, and been with the company now for about 8 years. And what I wanted to start today with for this TEL report card tool is to offer a perspective that I've gained as being one of many people that has left the academic environment to be able to join the corporate world. In my case, it was the LMS corporate world. But there's been a few things we've observed over the years that went into the creation of this tool. Now, when I first left academia to be able to join the company, there was a shift that was taking place. It was pretty much status quo as far as technology that was being used in higher ed and in K-12, really across the globe in particular. But a shift started to take place. And what I learned and what the perspective I've gained in my time working in the corporate side of things is that between the years of 2012 and 2019, it was really a time period of constant change and adoption. And I don't mean just Canvas. I mean learning management systems, technology, lots of things have shifted over the years. And that pretty much was what we worked with for a long time was just how do we help people change and adopt what is essentially the foundation to technology enhanced learning that we're going to be talking about today. What we were told, not what we just observed, but what we were told in case studies provided to us from different organizations was that they were looking for technologies that provided a better foundation for what they could offer their teaching and learning process that was there. Because that's all an LMS really is just the foundation to that teaching and learning process. And whether it was people that we at our company spoke to and ultimately decided to go with one of the different players in the market, that was still what they were looking for to be able to get there. And that was the focus during that time was let's get a better foundation. And keeping in the theme with Shaping EDU, then our Black Swan event happened, COVID-19, and years of focusing on let's get a better foundation, let's all be honest, was really put to the test during that time. A lot of people had to learn new skills and new things that they had never quite pushed for before. In fact, again, part of the feedback that we got in those case studies was part of our reason of looking for a new foundation is that we're tired of instructors just using them as a glorified file repository. We're tired of technologies that aren't interactive. We need things that are going to engage better because ultimately that's what our students and what our faculty really want and need. And so coming out of this time period, what we've also been hearing is the foundations have said a little bit more because of what people had to go through with the gauntlet of the times with the pandemic. People have gained new skill sets. People have done a lot over this time. And this idea of 7 years of adoption and changing to something new is evolving. And that's essentially what we're hearing constantly is, all right, we've adopted. Now what? So I work, again, on a team at Instructure, and I was tasked with a group of people to essentially come up with what's the answer to that question. They're using technology, and again, I don't just mean Canvas, I mean the technologies that are out there. So what do we do now? So the team that I worked on and led essentially made two crucial decisions in what we were going to do to try to answer this question. Decision number one, probably the biggest decision, we're not going to make this Canvas specific. It's going to be something that can apply to anyone. And number two, we're going to root this in research. Because if we're going to find an answer, it's going to be in a body that already exists. And some of us that worked on this team had a background with this concept in research, which there is a large body of research around the concept of technology enhanced learning. I published a study myself on this a couple years ago, and again, there's a massive body of work that's out there. And this was where we decided to focus our efforts on what next after just getting technologies. And to keep with Ruben's sci-fi analogy that I loved yesterday, a good sci-fi story, in my opinion, what makes it compelling is good science. If the science is good and it's a thinking person's story, that's really what engages me, and I think what engages a lot of us that spend our time around academia. And I will tell you that the team I work on, again, we're solutions engineers. I can't even tell you how much we dissected the movie The Martian, because essentially that's all this story was a science fiction solutions engineering story. We have a problem, we engineer a solution to it, we move forward, we keep going, we keep going. So we took this approach, the team that I was leading, on how do we go about answering that question of what are we doing past adoption. And so we adopted the scientific method because that's ultimately what was going to make the compelling narrative here. Observation, research, and testing. And ultimately that is what led to this tool that I'm about to hand out to you all called the Technology Enhanced Learning Report Card. Now, admittedly, self-servingly, since I was leading this group, I knew everybody knew of something called the Richter scale, so I thought I might just name this after myself and call it the Richter Edge scale, but thought that maybe wasn't as transparent as people wanted for what this tool was going to do. So we went with Technology Enhanced Learning Report Card because who in academia doesn't love a report card? So much focus on those things. So here was our research journey that we took to make this tool. Now, we started with the research of John Hattie, and I blame my alma mater, Arizona State, and the College of Ed that I went through there because Hattie was hammered into my head, and that's just how we started it. But at the end of the day, when we really looked at the body of research around technology enhanced learning, it was much more holistic and encompassing than just classroom-focused research. So we needed to go to something that was a bit broader and that was there. And what we found in that research journey were two different models called ACODE and EMM. ACODE is the Australasian Committee for Online Distance and E-Learning. EMM is an e-learning maturity model. Again, if you've got your scanners ready, I've linked out to both of those sites for the primary sources there so that you can see the models in their entirety. And what these models did is it takes the concept of technology enhanced learning and it breaks it down with immense granularity into the processes that make a technology enhanced learning environment and what it takes to be able to support it. Now, when I printed out all of the processes for both of these models, I literally did this and taped them together. You're going to laugh, but this is what it looked like in my kitchen in my living room. It was a 12-foot tall document with many, many processes that were in it. And this to me said, all right, time for some refinement. So what I did is I went through, because there was some overlap between the models of ACODE and EMM, I stripped out the ones that were redundant. And also because I'm looking at this from the vantage point of a vendor and saying, what can we do to be able to support this? I took out the processes that I cannot impact. For instance, some of the processes involved budget. I wish I could give you all more budget. I'm sure the sales reps at my company wish I could give you all more budget. I can't do that. So I stripped those out and just went to the ones that learning communities can be able to support. And that was my first wave of refinement to create this tool. And what I also saw were 7 themes that emerged in the processes that were there, that I'm calling my 7 KPAs of this, my key process areas. And those process areas were student engagement, faculty support, student support, professional collaboration, assessments, adoption, policy strategies, and oversight. And what we needed to do in order to make this a tool that's useful, of course, is we have to have it measurable. So we put it on a Likert scale, 1 through 5, and ultimately defined what 1 through 5 would mean. I'll get to that in a minute. But also not only looked at what this would mean to be able to do these things and how to measure them, but take the individual processes that went under these 7 KPAs and align it to specificity of what we can do to make this better. For instance, that document that you saw, the large one there, this is our close-up version of it, where we're taking the process here under student support, something like collecting feedback, and we're looking at, is this being done effectively with our students? How would we be able to do that? And I'm pointing in the matrix to, we've got data analysis, we have analytics, we have reporting that can help us start to answer the question of, is this something that is being done? Is it being done frequently? Who's doing it? How is it being done? This is the type of data that can help us figure these things out and ultimately move us through the process in this measurement. Essentially, all 7 KPAs go up to this type of definition. This is the specific one, slightly tweaked for student support, but they're all pretty much the same way. From a number 1, we've got it from an ad hoc approach. I have a problem, we're going to solve it quickly, but it's not in a model that's necessarily repeatable or in any structure. By number 2, we're adding some structure and we're making it so that it's repeatable. By 3, we've got it defined. We're starting to collect some data on that repeatable model. By number 4, we're really refining it with more granularity. We're adding in more data and we're starting to provide analysis of that data. And in an optimal environment for technology enhanced learning maturity, we're taking that data, we're looking at it over time, and we're putting in continuous improvement models for how we're going to do that. Ultimately, a lot of institutions that I went out and spoke to about this tool as I was kind of road testing it would find themselves at a 2 or a 3 in the way that things were, and then the question became, what specifically do we need to do to move ourselves from a 2 to a 4? Optimally, we'd love to get here. There's challenges always in getting to that high optimization level. It is, of course, possible, but always the challenge to be able to do it. And so that was where we really stripped down into the details of what can we do. And so from this, we've taken the research, put it together, built a tool, created 7 KPAs, and a term that we use internally at Instructure is PVT, Product Validation Tour. Again, working on a team of solutions engineers, the 2 people that invented Canvas from the beginning, when they took their role with the company they created, they were the original solutions engineers that spoke to people in IT, to instructors, to students about how to develop the product. Coming in that lineage and respecting that lineage and that background, I did the same with this tool, taking it out to different people in different environments, beta testing it, seeing how it would be able to be received, and getting the feedback to be able to refine it further. And here is essentially the feedback we got from organizations. The general consensus that I got from everybody was the peer-reviewed research makes this a wonderful tool to reflect on. This is not something proprietary. It's rooted in research. It's being used. It's something that is definitely, again, a large body of research is out there, and let's root it in that. Next, when I went into the Midwest and I bumped this off of medical school, the feedback was they were blown away at some of these questions that people had never asked at the institution, and they felt like that would be something that was fairly consistent. What are we not doing to be able to move these things through? They hadn't even thought of some of these processes that were there to be able to make themselves better in that teaching and learning environment. Now, when I ran this by a large university system in the Midwest, they'd already been implementing a model that they had been using there for maturity. And the question we got from them, because they were already doing something similar, was, well, what members of the university are needed to submit the score? And ultimately, we decided by KPA that would differ. So if it's a focus on student engagement, and we're going to do the survey on student engagement, and we're going to look through all the processes, do we have our leaders that are there making sure? Do we have our instructional designers as a part of this, our leadership? Does the organization have something akin to a Center for Teaching and Learning that can have leadership and directors giving these scores? This institution in particular had a director of student success. That was a part of their executive council. When I ran this by another school and kind of told them what we got with the feedback, they said, wow, we've never even thought of having a director of student success. So again, questions were being brought up because of these research and this PVT that we were doing. I think this was the other big one when I ran this by a community college system. Could we see how we are comparing to our peer organizations? And the answer is absolutely yes, which to me as a researcher is probably the most salivating thing of this, to be able to say, what is it one institution is doing that others aren't? How can we network together? What can we do to better these processes and build that into a collaborative feedback model? And then, of course, I went to an R1 institution, too, to just see from a very large organizational standpoint what other things might I be missing about how to provide this tool and be able to gather the best data possible for this type of feedback. And in this particular R1, the budget was heavily geared towards liberal arts degrees, where there was a lot of training, a lot of interaction with faculty members to help them know what to do, to be able to learn about the tools that they had at their disposal, whereas other colleges didn't necessarily get that type of budget allocation. And so what we decided was, if we're going to do this fairly, it's going to have to be an average that's going to be submitted upon for the institution, and then be able to work on how to better that average score that's there by all the different places, because some institutions are just very large. So with all of this feedback, I was able to put together the surveys and the tools that were there, and essentially work toward today, where I get to ask a group like yourself, in an organization like Shaping EDU, which I love the calls to action here, of can we do something with this? Is this something that we can start to gather some data on so that we can start doing these types of things that are here? Now, as I mentioned from the beginning, get the phones and the scanners ready, because I'm going to have a QR code for each of the 7 KPAs that are there. By no means is there the expectation of submitting everything right now during this session, but this is to get the links that are going to come up. And what I can offer as my preliminary captain's log, if you will, during this, is that by taking the survey, an organization gets to do a self-assessment based on that research. How are you handling these processes? Vicki, I have a question.
Yes, we had a question in the chat about being able to provide direct links in addition to the QR codes. And so some people don't have cameras.
Okay.
They
I
don't have their
will
phone.
tell you what, as a backup, I put underneath the QR code the link that's there, so I'll just paste them into chat as I go through.
Thank you.
Yep. So again, what I can offer as my preliminary captain's log here is the opportunity for the self-assessment. If you grab my email, I'll be happy once the data is collected to be able to provide it back, along with some feedback and access to that matrix that I made of how we can work through those different processes that we're looking to do better. What I would love to do, if I could get enough participation, is do comparisons of the different attendees here at Shaping EDU, and start looking at how different organizations are handling some of these things. Ultimately, what could be done if I get enough participation is a Shaping EDU benchmark for attendees that are here, and see how everybody is doing with that. Now, with that moving forward, and again, I'll leave my slide deck so I can put the codes into chat here. But for those that have the scanner and you want to be able to do it, you can go ahead. And the first one is the survey for student support. Now, what I wanted to do is just give one example of a couple of the processes that are in here. Again, there's a lot of detail, and it would take much longer than we have to be able to do that during this session. But student support primarily focuses on the student feedback process. Are students giving feedback to their instructors? Are they giving feedback to their institution? And as an example of what can be done for feedback is, are communication tools being used to inform the student about information pertaining to their work? Are rubrics being used that are clearly articulated so that they understand what is expected of them as they're doing their work? These are the things that, again, it takes institutions years to be able to go through this type of process. But what we can do here is break down all of these things into the processes in TEL research and say, here's what we can do to make all these things better. Everybody get the link? Scan it. Thumbs up if you got it.
So just one other thing, when you click on the link or you scan it by phone, it says the survey can only be taken by invitation.
I'll change I should have changed that yesterday. I thought I touched them all up. I'll switch it up. Just grab the links. I'll make sure you can open it.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. All right, so the next, moving from student support to faculty support. Again, feedback being part of the focus of the word and the theme support here. Do faculty members understand the tools that they have to be able to provide a great environment? For instance, I cannot tell you how many times as an instructor students came to me and they would say, I'm struggling. Can you help me understand why? And so one particular example of what we can do with that process, one of the processes under faculty support is using data to be able to help students understand what's going right or what's going wrong. In the case, in the instance I'm bringing up here, this is on an analytics dashboard where I've brought up a single student from a course and I'm comparing that student to the cohort for a particular assignment. So as I go through this dashboard that you're seeing here, the student is plotted with the green squares, the cohort average is the blue circle that's here, and I can clearly see that in this student's case, they're actually scoring above their cohort on the majority of their assignments. However, there's an outlier. It isn't just this student that's not doing well, it's everyone. Something was missed. Did I not teach something appropriately? Were my instructions not clear? What happened that there was a struggle that was here? This is the type of feedback and data that as an instructor, I want to find on my own and refine. I don't want this to be something that a student puts in a survey and slams me for at the end of a semester. This is not something I want an evaluator to look at and say, what's going on? I want to know this. And in an environment where, again, we all can think of the faculty members that we work with. We love some of them. They're very innovative. There's some, bless their heart, they're not as innovative. Getting some people to this level to understand that they can have access to data like this and then act on it, that's a struggle. And that is going to be part of that maturity process to be able to move them through on faculty support. One example that, again, one of these processes could take months and years to be able to focus on. But this is how we can keep moving ourselves forward as an institution. Number 3. Oh wait, let me get this one in the chat for...
I just put it in the chat for you.
Oh, thank you. All right, student engagement. Engagement, different than support. So what was the theme that the processes fell under with engagement? Engagement was more of a connection to the why, not necessarily the what do I need to do, but why do I need to do it. I just joined the session earlier on micro-credentials. It's something that, as some of you probably know at Instructure, I'm taking a bit of an interest in these days. A lot of people are focusing on credentials and what the badging and micro-credentials can do. But in addition to that, we have outcomes. We have outcomes and skill sets that are aligned to our degree programs that are there, and we can do a better job as an industry, really, helping our students understand you're taking this assignment, you're doing this work, you're in this course because these are the skills and these are the skill sets you're going to get by being a part of it. Are we doing an effective enough job aligning our content to the outcomes that our program has to be addressed on anyway for accreditation? Are we articulating that to the students so they understand what they're getting? I think we all know a lot of students are bypassing college these days. They're trying to find that $1 million TikTok lifestyle and figure out how they can possibly succeed in a non-traditional way. When, as it's been stated in a few sessions today, college degrees still remain the gold standard, but the narrative's being lost, partially because of politics, partially because of just struggles in the market. If we can do a better job of engaging our students, of understanding this is why you're doing the work, this is why I'm asking you to challenge yourself, that student engagement can get better, and we as an institution can mature with how we do that. Let me get the student engagement in there. All right, got that in chat. All right, next. Professional collaboration. Gone are the days of instructors going into a room, acting as though it's a black box and doing whatever we want to do. I know when I started as an instructor, that seemed to be a theme in both higher ed and in K-12. That's not really how it works anymore. And so what tools do we have, and how effective are we using tools for professional collaboration? Just one example in the processes there is sharing resources digitally. In this case, most of your platforms that you're going to have out there have a tool in it called a Learning Object Repository. In Canvas, it's called Commons. There's LORs and other platforms, but again, all of them tend to have this. And so are we creating an environment where we've got people working together on different work, on different content? Are we doing things like OER and developing not only just what we have for assignments and tests and other things, but content and curriculum themselves? The community college up the street from where I am here in my home in Chandler, Arizona, is offering what they're calling Z degrees, zero textbook degrees, where they're authoring content in Canvas. And part of their marketing pitch to be able to get students to sign up is, if you sign up, you pay your tuition, and that's it. There's no other fees for books, and we're making sure you can do that. That is not possible without a massive amount of professional collaboration to be able to make that sort of thing happen. And the dividends that are being paid on that are really great for that institution. So again, can we mature and do something to revolutionize and innovate based on the metrics and the processes under professional collaboration? 3 more. Assessment, everybody's favorite word. It's here whether we like it or not. And assessment involves lots of high-level data analysis. It's not going away. It's only going to get more refined and detailed as time goes on. I found a video from Kansas State University. I'll send this deck out afterwards too. I linked it in here. Where they are using data analysis in business intelligence tools from their learning platforms, from their student information system, aggregating things together so they can get a deep, deep breakdown on data analysis about how successful are people, breaking it down by demographic, breaking it down by a myriad of other metadata principles that are there, to be able to start sussing out the patterns of what they can do and possibly address. This is something that, again, I see very commonly at R1 institutions, but a lot of institutions are struggling with how to do this. And so the processes in this survey will challenge where are you looking and what can you do to be able to get better with this type of process. 2 more. One of my childhood heroes. No, I wish Bob Ross was sponsoring this, but unfortunately no. Let's just focus on that adoption. Your blank canvas, pun intended, if you will. To be able to have and use the technology that's there. So are we simply getting people to use the tech? Can we get them to grab the tools we're providing so that we can enhance our learning based on the processes that are a part of it? Putting that one into chat. If I can spell adoption. Sorry, typing in front of an audience is never wise. And then last but not least, policies, strategies, and oversight. Basic things like, do we have people in with the roles to be able to grab reporting access to the data that they need? Do we have a strategy about how to do all of the things that the institution needs to do in order to support a technology-enhanced learning environment based on the research and based what is here? I just put policies, and I got that one in there. And with this tool, once we kind of put it all together, the team that I was working with, we kind of thought to ourselves, you know, if we can do this and gather the data, it's not science fiction anymore, it's just science fact. We've got the observation that this is something that people are looking to move past, just using technology, but using it effectively in a mature manner. What can we do when we actually apply the scientific method to this, gather data, and be able to create those types of benchmarks and those types of feedback opportunities that are there? And that was ultimately the guiding principle behind what we're calling our Technology Enhanced Learning Report Card. Our way to score ourselves as an institution and be able to find out research-based ways to grow. As I stated at the beginning, what the future could hold with this is just the basic self-assessment feedback. I'd love to provide comparisons for Shaping EDU and the benchmarks that are here. But beyond that, if I get enough feedback from this organization, I'd love to be able to make this a part of what just the service offerings are at Instructure and be able to help do this at a broader level, because then, the researcher in me is going crazy right now, we could compare universities to different colleges, college to college, university to university. We could put the test of R1s versus community colleges. Again, think of the combinations here. Technical schools versus the consortium of Unison. Canvas, technologies like this, used in K-12. Technology-enhanced learning is not specific to higher ed. It's all over. And again, I find myself at a company that provides services to over 7,000 customers with tens of millions of users, and all of them get service feedback as far as how you're using the platform. Could we gather data on a broader scale and make those types of comparisons? Could we do something as abstract as rural K-12s, urban higher eds, global comparisons? Because again, this is not something specific to one region. If you ask me, That's where we can go to infinity and beyond with respect to the research that we can do with this. And that's where the passion has come in to help develop this tool that I'm hoping can become something that can be utilized and we can start getting some feedback on with a community like yourself. So with that, I'd open to questions and thank you for taking the time to be able to listen to this idea of the Technology Enhanced Learning Report Card. Will all organizations that allow that public comparison? I wouldn't disclose it publicly. I would be able to provide it just back to the organization, and I wouldn't necessarily disclose publicly who's doing what. It would have to be organizations talking to each other and doing that. Yeah, George, that's a great question, and that's, again, some of the feedback we got in the PVT is let's just create a benchmark for industries. But the point is, we could do this type of comparison from a high level without naming names. Is it feasible to use these kinds of tools to drive change at institutions through more than just doubling down on existing practices? Tom, great question too. Again, I think that existing practices, what we are finding, aren't necessarily rooted in a research model. They can be very ad hoc. They can be very just kind of off the wall. They aren't necessarily repeatable. And so I think that was, and again, that's part of the feedback I got in taking this around to people was this takes it away from something that's, somebody's personal mission and there may be some ego or something that's a part of it. This is the research. This is how we can measure maturity. Let's see what we're doing and what we're not doing that's out of this. And so far, a lot of the questions that I have been shown is that the questions aren't being asked. That was the general consensus from everybody that I went to. And so it seems like an opportunity to expand and broaden how we're able to provide that type of environment.
Yeah, what I was trying to get at there a little bit was, you were looking at assessment, for instance, and a lot of the data-driven stuff with assessment relies on old-fashioned high-stakes testing of various levels, even down to quizzes and so on,
right?
Which are in many cases a very poor assessment tool. And so when you get to more sophisticated ways of assessing people, it's much harder to create data. But how do you push people to those kinds of things? I mean, one of the things that came out during the pandemic, which caused huge amounts of panic, was, oh my God, everybody's going to cheat on these silly tests that we have. And I haven't had tests in my class in years. And it's not because I don't assess people, it's because that's not how I assess the people.
Sure.
And so the question I have as far as your tool is that you're doing a good job of illustrating those data points based on existing practice. I'm just wondering if there's a way we can use that to sort of start redefining that practice into a next level technology solution.
Sure. And I also want to make sure we address the word assessment because it's very much a double meaning and it's always something I have to define when I go out. So often people will say assessment and they go straight to tests. Think of assessment in this context as more as your university is being assessed by your accrediting body. They're looking at much more refined processes, how things are aligned, curriculum mapping, those types of things, and assessing it from that standpoint. That's not necessarily assessment as a test. That goes beyond that side of it. So again, the double meaning of assessment, that's not what this is looking at on testing. It's looking at those other aspects of curriculum mapping and alignment.
Sounds like e-portfolios are a good solution there.
Honestly, I think badging is probably where it's going to end up going, but need something.
Badging is grading by another name if you do it wrong. I mean, that's the thing.
Incredibly true.
To me, tangible work product is ultimately, if I'm an employer, I don't really care what's on your transcript, but if you can show me that you built something and you know how to communicate effectively and so on and so forth, then that's a much more powerful tool because that's showing you can do something I need you to do, as opposed to having learned about something that I might need you to do or maybe not, and I don't know because the transcript doesn't tell me that.
Correct, which in this case goes back to that student engagement part of it, of them actually knowing what are the skills and what are the things I'm getting. Why am I paying $80,000 for this degree? What am I getting out of it? So that I can articulate that to a potential employer. Well, if not, again, other questions can be asked later. You all have my email if you grabbed that was there. I'll be making this slide deck available. I'll get it out in any way that I can to the community. And in addition to that, I will check on those surveys. I thought I scanned them all last night to make sure they were open. If not, I'll make sure that they are. And so keep those links. And again, take the opportunity. I'd love to engage and have some of that feedback. So thank you all for taking the time to be able to listen to this.